All right, welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. Ahead of Prime Minister Mark Carney's official visit to India starting tomorrow, Carney has stated that he no longer believes that India is linked to violent crimes or related activities on Canadian soil. A senior official also stated that we have robust diplomatic engagement and we are confident that activity is not continuing. This marks a significant thaw after years of tension sparked by 2023 allegations over the killing of 6 separatists. Hardeep Singh Nijjar claims India has always denied. Well, Carney's trip from Mumbai business events to high-level talks with Prime Minister Modi in New Delhi is set to focus on trade resets, including launching the SEPA negotiations, uranium deals, critical minerals and tech partnerships. While some Sikh groups criticize the shift, both sides are signaling a pragmatic new chapter, and we're going to talk about this. Joining us on the platform at this point in time is Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, Major General Sudhakar Ji, senior geopolitical strategic defense expert, is with us on the show. Surinder Singh Lali, international affairs expert, is also joining us on the program. And last but by no means the least, Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian. Professor Nalapat, I'll begin with you. Well, I used the word thaw, and this thaw has only happened, so it's only materialized since there has been a change in leadership, once again corroborating and substantiating the fact that it was perhaps the Canadian leadership, or scratch that, sir, it was a Canadian leader who was responsible for creating, this menacing situation between India and Canada. That is why a change in government always helps situations like these.
Well, I'd like to say that you're completely right. The fact of the matter is that Justin Trudeau made all kinds of wild allegations against India, totally unsubstantiated, and frankly, he is pandering to that small Khalistani element in Canada, and he is pandering to them completely, maybe because he and his father are known to have very strong, had in the case of his father and have in the case of Justin Trudeau, very strong links with a country that's not exactly friendly to India, namely China. Now, I'd like to say that Mark Carney, the successor of Justin Trudeau, deserves an A+ for diplomacy. What has he done? He has effectively said that there is no need for concern that Indian government is in any way sponsoring violent activities on Canadian soil. At the same time, he has given a nudge to the Justin Trudeau camp, still a significant camp in Canadian politics, that look, I have not said that it never happened. I'm only saying it's not happening now. Whatever it is, it's a victory for Indian diplomacy, it's a victory for the Prime Minister, and a victory for the External Affairs Minister, that the Canadians have come this far and they now acknowledge that there is absolutely no risk of violence sponsored by government, especially the government of India, which is wedded to a policy of peace all over the world. And I think that is a very welcome move by Mark Carney, and we can understand his pandering to Justin Trudeau to some extent, as correctly been said by you. Canada is rich in rare earths. Canada is rich in all kinds of technologies also. It's a huge country, 3 times the size of India, and it's got an open border with the United States. It's an ideal partner for India. And Mark Carney, if you remember, when this Trump tariff situation started getting out of control, Mark Carney was the first Prime Minister to say that, look, the fact of the matter is that we, the other part, forget about the United States, forget about China, we have to look after ourselves, and we have to be close to each other. And as part of that policy, he's come to India, and I hope very soon there will be a reciprocal visit by Prime Minister Modi to Canada, and I warmly welcome a very strong relationship between Canada and India, a relationship that can be of immense benefit to both sides, not least in rare earths and in artificial intelligence. Thank you, Vinay.
You're quite right, sir. Ambassador Sajjanhar. In fact, we all remember that dark phase when Justin Trudeau likened India to a terrorist state and in fact made these wild accusations. And the surprising part was that not a shred of proof was ever furnished for the Indian government to go over, or any proof was published to the world at large, to substantiate these wild allegations. And it all goes to show that one person had ulterior motives. One person was trying to, in fact, please a section of people in Canada, and I know you know who they are, sir. And all that is water under the bridge now.
Yes, thank you very much, Vineet, for having me. You're very right. I agree with all that you have said. I agree with what all my good friend Professor Madhav Nalapat has said. It was one person and his wild politics, because he wanted to stay in power and he did not have enough number of votes, enough number of seats to stay in power. He had to seek support from an outside party, and that party being, having much smaller number of legislators in the parliament, but they were really making him dance around, their little finger. And, this was not only, I'll not say fool ourselves, but let's not delude ourselves by saying that this happened only in 2023 when he went on the 18th of September and stood up in the parliament and he said that there are credible allegations. Now, I don't know, meaning English is not my first language, English is not the first language of most of your listeners, but how can there be, this is a contradiction in terms, credible allegations. Allegations can never be credible in that sense. So this is what he kept on saying. There was not, as you mentioned, there was no evidence whatsoever, and this is what we kept asking the Canadian government, the RCMP, that you come up with evidence and we are willing to look at it. There were these certain similar allegations made by the Americans also, but they came up with some sort of evidence. So we set up a committee to look into that evidence, because we very categorically told the Canadians that India is not in the business of fomenting supporting such elements in any foreign country. We are there's no double speak as far as terrorism is concerned. India has a zero policy on terrorism. I would also take back your viewers and listeners to the visit of Justin Trudeau to India in 2018. That again was, meaning he was here for 1 week or so, and maybe people remember how he was pandering to the same set of people back home in Canada, trying to woo them. So while it was a visit to India, but he was really playing to the gallery as far as his domestic constituency is concerned. His visit to the Golden Temple, Darbar Sahib, his reception in which there was in New Delhi at the house of the Canadian High Commissioner, where there was a terrorist who was on the list, on the guest list, and his sartorial sense in terms of the manner in which he dressed and the music to which he danced. It was all basically, he was trying to curry favor with that particular community back home, so that they would support him. But it is for such narrow political ends that he spoiled the total relationship with India. You would remember that Prime Minister Modi had visited Canada during the first year after he came to power. I think in 2015, possibly in April 2015, he had visited Canada. And it appeared as if the relationship had a very bright future, because we started discussing about the free trade agreement. We started discussing the export of nuclear fuel, nuclear material from Canada. Canada, after all, is a very significant repository. It has huge reserves of uranium, and now we are seeing that just within less than a year of Mark Carney coming to power, we have a deal of 2.8 billion Canadian dollars. That would be about $2 billion US dollars, and that is going to be signed. And I'm sure the FTA will also be taken up very quickly. India has already signed about 8 major deals over the FTAs over the last 2-3 years. The largest being, the mother of all deals with the European Union, but other significant ones also with UK, EFTA, Australia, UAE, etc. So with Canada also, since there is that complementarity, there is no competition between the two economies. I am certain, like with Israel, as it has been decided today, that we will fast track the FTA negotiations. So that is definitely going to happen. I think we can look forward to better times on this. The last point, if you permit, I'll make. I think to an extent, this urgency that we see also on the part of Canada is part of the reason, the credit goes to Donald Trump, because the manner in which he has ill-treated not only Canada, but most of the allies, most of the partners, whether it is NATO countries or it is, the US, Canada, Mexico, free trade agreement partners, or any of the others. He has treated his adversaries with much more softly with kid gloves. But he has been very harsh on his allies, and I think this is what led Carney also to make his historic speech at the at the World Economic Forum, where he said that it is not a transition, it is a rupture of the Western-led liberal order that is there. So I think all countries are hedging their bets, all countries are diversifying, and that is why we see Mr. Carney also coming to India. He has been to China, although I have my reservations on that as to what are the sort of agreements he might have signed there, because it shouldn't be a case from the frying pan into the fire. He goes out of the clutches of the United States and gets into bed with China, and that
Right.
might even be sort of more harmful. But with India, European Union, others,
You're
I
right
think
about
it
that,
is
sir.
going to be a win-win partnership.
You're absolutely right about that. Mr. Lali, before I go to General Sudhakarji and understand the implications of the geopolitical and strategic impact that this reset is going to have, let's also not forget about the Khalistanis, the coterie that is going to be extremely upset now that, their anti-India sentiment is not going to find too much wind.
Yeah, Vineet, I definitely would like to say that these fringe rogues who operate under the bogey of free speech, they're Canadian citizens. I'm not too sure if they are Sikh separatists, because they're Canadian Sikhs, and we need 87% of us live in India. So they have been nourished by the deep state of Canada and for the narrow interest of Canadian politicians who succumb to them for their financial gains. And as we all know, that these fringe rogues have been involved in all sorts of nefarious activities. But that's a different discussion now. We need, as Ambassador Ashok Sajna rightly said, that as much as I don't wish to take away from Mark Carney, who is an extremely educated individual. He's been to both Oxford and Harvard and worked for Goldman Sachs. So I think all he did was, he just probably sat at the table and his rationality prevailed on him that, today any alliance without India on any kind is a non-starter. I mean, even on this trip, if you see, he's visiting Mumbai, Sydney, and Tokyo. And he's trying to create this sort of a technology corridor for Canada. And, like Australia has the rare earths and we bring our bit on the table, and so does Canada. But we need, Donald Trump has to be thanked for it. Had he not ridiculed the way, he did to Canada by the longest unguarded border, about 9,000 kilometers, is with America and Canada. And I have driven through that border. I probably lost count of it. And 75% of the Canadian trade was with America. So, let's thank Donald Trump for helping Mark Carney gather the courage of conviction, even if it was a Freudian slip on the way he admitted at the World Economic Forum on how America ruled the roost since the Second World War, and it was totally one man show, one country show. So I'm so happy that there is a large diaspora. There is so much between the two countries. Critical minerals, pension funds we need. Canada has over 2 trillion pension funds, from which I believe you do already have 50 billion of them. Clean energy, renewable energy, a big talent mobility. And then, you talk about Canadian exports to India, wheat, pork, dairy, and national products. So I think it's definitely a little late, but it's a step in the right direction. And these fringe rogues had to be cut to size and put back into their corner, because as if they were exceeding their brief and influencing a decision between two English-speaking fellow democracies, which not only have great potential, but have a great diaspora amongst the two. So I'm happy for it, and I see no other direction in this to be going but for North, because these French rogues have been put back into place, Vineet.
You're quite right about that. And General Sudhakarji, this reset is obviously welcome, but do you think that India needs to in fact exercise caution? There needs to be, some level of being circumspect when it comes to dealing with Canada, or do you think that India should go all out?
Absolutely. Well, there is a cosmic convergence in our thought process. Vineet, thank you. Good evening. And thank you for inviting me for your show. And compliments to our distinguished co-panelists. The issue that you have raised, you see, once bitten, twice shy. There is an old saying, once bitten by a snake, even a thread should look like a snake. And if it is not, then we are not pragmatic in our approach. When I say this, there are multiple issues which are getting thrown up. It's a good thing, good turnaround, but the kind of journey we have had for past, say, more than 1 year or so, they must give out certain lessons for our national security paradigm to remain focused on. And particularly when I speak about this, we need to be mindful of fact of personalities like Jagmeet Singh and his New Democratic Party. When the New Democratic Party was emerging in 2017, perhaps a lesson comes out that India should have been very, very cautious of the fact about the activities, about the kind of proclivity, the affiliations that were developing towards Khalistani groups. Now that gives us a lesson that we need to be very watchful. Our intelligence agencies who are operative across the border in overseas, they need to look out for these kind of very objective kind of tasking, one. Number two, we need to also understand that Canada is not Canada today. It is not the Canada that it was yesterday, or it can turn around also, like the way we never expected that America would behave this way. We never expected that Canada would have a turnaround the manner in which it is happening. There could be compelling circumstances which will compel or force Canada to actually take a different approach and path. So we need to actually be very, very proactive in our foresight and also assessment, so that we cater for the countermeasure called as prevention is better than cure. Third and most important point is we need to realize we have been often talking about the transatlantic relationship based on which the global apex organizations are existing today, consequent to failure and collapse of the League of Nations way back in 1945. Now, those talking and discussions, we are talking about the fracture, actually they have fallen apart. This is a clear distinction that none of the organizations are effectively working. They're more than dysfunctional, and therefore India has a very serious and responsible task at hand. How do you navigate this complexity? There is so much of uncertainty, so much of churn. How do you do it? Is it the multipolarity that people have been talking, consequent to the bipolar world, or is it the unipolarity which is in declining stage, or is it something else? I think India is on the right lines as per my understanding. This is called reformed multi-alignment. Reformed multi-alignment is actually directly driven by the national interest, which India is taking a rightful and the correct approach to address such kind of emerging situations, and to be on the ahead of the loop. Rather than being surprised, we need to actually have some kind of a mechanism existing, maybe a kind of a consolidated, converging objective intelligence apparatus, give them all kinds of wherewithal required, so that we can nip the bud when situation arises well before it starts, impacting adversely against our national interest. Last point I have, Vineet, is something very, very phenomenal. We need to understand that there is a book called, often I think during your moderating the discussion, I have referred to this book, Monsoon, Indian Ocean, The Future of American Power by Dr. Robert Kaplan. This book is it's been developed on a research carried out by Dr. Robert Kaplan. Perhaps it got published sometime in 2016. And it says, the central point of the book is that the commercial basket of the planet or the world will gravitate to Indian Ocean in 21st century. What he meant was that as on today, India has got almost close to 570 million consumers who have the capacity to expend more than $12 a day. This I'm not saying, that the United Nations, the dealing agency has given out. China has got around 787 million, and by 2035, India would be overtaking China as far as the expenses, that is the domestic consumption I'm talking of. And also he highlights one concluding remark. He says that if America has to remain relevant as a superpower in 21st century, it will do good to America to focus on the region. So focusing on the region is what? Not by, taking Munir onto the lap of America, or, doing things which are inimical to India's interest in Bangladesh or Maldives or Sri Lanka. It is by collaboration. That is what India has to strive for. Despite all challenges, despite all pitfalls, we need to look ahead with our national interest objective of $30 trillion economy by 2047 or earlier.
You're quite right, sir. You're quite right, and you've summed it up, quite eloquently. We have run out of time, but I appreciate everybody's perspective, and of course, this reset is more than welcome. Indian students, whose registrations in Canada declined by almost 50%, is likely to go up as well. High commissioners being reappointed once again in both embassies will also be a positive sign. Thank you everyone for being a part of this conversation. We take a short break on that note. Be right back.